Welcome to the Real Health and Nutrition Podcast. My name's Max Dennehy.
My name is Matthew Rigoni.
We're your dietitian duo ready to take on the world of performance, sport, health, nutrition. There's so many things we're tackling, Matt. Matthew, can you please take us through what our topic for today is?
That is a great segue, Max. So today we're talking about the REAL acronym and why it's R.E.A.L. Despite my graphic designers detest, it's very much of importance to us that we express that it is an acronym, and it's not just for the sake of using the word real. It's really about incorporating all the different aspects that really go into our health as a whole. We're going to be discussing R first with recovery, exercise, and lifestyle, which is coincidentally the website domain that we currently run. Max, there's a absolute bucket load of things to go through with REAL. The purpose of today is to talk about it, come to a discussion, conclusion that best suits our viewers and listeners to potentially take away some items that's going to help them in their daily lives. All about finding
Most
a middle
definitely.
ground that works with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. So we're kind of talking recently about how many podcasts we think this might take. And I think we're trying to condense it as much as possible because we just thought it could go on for forever almost, it feels like, because there's just so many things we want to say. So many, essentially this is what our company stands for, really, all the things that our core values. And I was even thinking, Matt, I had the idea of, instead of skipping the A, because essentially we were just going to do the recovery, the exercise, the lifestyle, we could kind of add in a little activity area in that as well, and that separate exercise into activity, and then exercise being, more like training and like specific exercise rather than activities could be more generalized. What do you think about that?
Max, it absolutely pisses me off that we have the exact same brains. I was thinking about that, like kicking in my bed the other night. I'm like, shit, really should have just named it recovery, exercise, activity, lifestyle, because that would have been so much cooler and better and more encapsulate exactly what we're going for. You know what? Maybe we'll actually rebrand after this episode and just make a couple small adjustments to the domain. I wouldn't actually be against that. I think that's a great idea. Let's go through with that.
Yeah, cool. Well, that gives us, unfortunately, more podcasts to speak about on this topic, but look, it's exciting for us because this is what we love. Let's take it away. I'm interested to hear, because obviously I know my thoughts. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what does recovery mean for you as a practitioner.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, I guess, two different ways I can come at the recovery, I guess, aspect of REAL. We're really looking at, it's not just about your physical recovery on, let's say, a day and or event from a specific thing. It's also encompassing the entire notion and or idea of recovery, going through physical, psychological, whether it's philosophical recovery as well. It really does span across a few different areas. In particular, of note, which I'd love to discuss a little bit further with you, Max, is fatigue, wear and tear, injury, systemic and chronic, whether it's inflammation and or side effects from the psychological, being, again, psychological fatigue, stress, hormone imbalance, hypercortisolemia, CRP raised, chronic inflammation, emotional and overwhelmedness, and of course, sleep, the biggest pinnacle of recovery and probably the founder and really solid baseline that we can't get away from. Sleep is essential to all of recovery. That's pretty much going over the majority of things I want to talk about in this podcast today, Max. What is R for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to be able to rattle off as many as what you were just speaking about then. But R for me encapsulates a lot of those things you were talking about. I think for me, I like to probably put it into two main subcategories, and then we can delve off into there. Main one being the physical and the mental, really, for me. I think we've got the physical in all those elements you were saying before. And then I really, really don't believe there's enough effort and conscious thought about the recovery from a mental side of things. And we might be being a bit too philosophical in saying it's recovery, really. It's just more, it's not really recovery. It's more not active recovery.
Like a maintenance.
Because maintenance, exactly, yeah, because you should be constantly doing it. You shouldn't be killing yourself and then you sit recovering for a little bit and then kill yourself again. It should just be more constant throughout the entirety of your life. So that's all I'd say about the mental one, is that we're maybe being a little bit too flimsical with the wording, but
well, I think that's a great topic to start off with, if you would like to, Max, the idea of holidays and how it fits into recovery and whether it's appropriate or not. Happy to jump into that in a second. Did you want to go through any more points first?
No, let's go.
Beautiful. So holidays, they've always been quite the interesting topic to me. I never quite understood why people like them. And everyone goes, Matt, you're a dumbass. Get out of here. Like, everyone loves holidays. I'm like, yeah, but like, does your life suck that much that you need the holiday to recover from the daily fatigue, inflammation, stress, emotional susceptibility? What's actually going on? Are we properly recovering on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, or is it more so just barely hanging in there until you completely burn out, then you have a holiday?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because I think from a weird objective standpoint, what you're saying makes sense. But I would just say that for me, what I've found is it's actually something to look forward to. So it's something that, as I have a holiday coming up that's planned, and it's something that I can think about, and there's times throughout the day where I get excited about that. So it's not even necessarily that, because to be honest, man, I'm having a really good time at the moment with my life. I'm loving work, loving everything we're doing behind the scenes that people aren't able to see. And it's really good. I get up in the morning and I'm really excited to get out of bed. I'll be asleep for 6 hours. I'll wake up, I'm exhausted, but I'm like, let's fucking go. Like, let's get this shit done. So yeah, without a doubt, I'm just really enjoying my life at the moment. But nonetheless, I've got a holiday coming up and it's still exciting for me. So I understand where you're coming from, but I do think it provides a really nice element of excitement to people's lives, whether their life is good or not.
Yeah, that's probably the best rebuttal I've ever heard from that point that I've just raised there. I've just gone on a holiday myself. I'm not exactly the glowing example of a perfect philosophical entity. I definitely enjoy a holiday, but it's more so from a period of time that I can do something else that isn't my main set of stuff. So for me personally, I went snowboarding, which is I absolutely love snowboarding. I can't really do that on a daily basis because it just takes so much time to drive to the location and then drive up the mountain each morning and then prepare and get ready with your boots and your jacket and everything like that and go down the slopes. It's very much a time intensive thing, and splitting that up throughout the week, potentially not the best use of our time just from an efficiency perspective. Like if I was to go on a day trip to where we went to Falls Creek, it's a 4-hour drive plus an hour that goes up the mountain. 5 hours drive each day. You spend 2 hours on the mountain, then you got to go home. Sounds like a not the best plan of action from my perspective. So I definitely see that holidays provide an aspect of, let's say, enjoyment. I just don't know if it fits into the recovery as well as I think people put on the pedestal it does.
I think it does. I think the mental recovery, especially if you're in a position where you are able to, I think a lot of people find themselves in positions at the moment with their work where they're never able to actually leave work. The whole thing of, computers, phones, etc., has unfortunately made a lot of people feel like they're never clocking off anymore. Which, pros and cons. I'm personally someone who I don't really mind. I feel like it adds too much burden to my mind, and to be honest, if I don't want to work, I will just not use my phone. That's just the reality of the situation I'm in. But maybe because I've known nothing else but that, it can. If I was 60 and I had had a whole life where I hadn't worked as soon as I gone home, then I could probably understand that would be a pretty weird phenomena. But I think the amazing thing about a holiday is everyone knows you're on holiday, right? You tell people, hey, I'm going on leave, or everyone knows, and they go, well, he's not going to answer his phone. There's no point contacting him because he's on holiday. And I think that's the biggest thing is it's almost like it's replaced going home from what going home used to be.
That is such an interesting take. I've never thought about it like that. I actively shut off everything to do with work when I'm not working. Given it is majority of the time that I'm awake at the moment, a very vast majority, but I almost in a sense from what you're describing have a holiday at the end of the day each day. It's very much a sense of, okay, I'm done working, put that to the side, no more. It's not even checking email. It's not even check messages from a work-related thing. It's very much a, hey, you're done, finished, donezo. Especially if it's something that I'm not necessarily enjoying as much, like the real content and supporting people through our dietitian consultations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so just make it clear in case anyone thought Matt misspoke, then he was very clear that he's loving the real content. Just in case you may have interpreted that he's not enjoying it. So yeah, that's interesting. And I tend to be the same. To be fair, probably a little bit less in that I'm more laissez-faire with it. You know, if someone wants to call me, I'll pick it up. You know, I don't really mind what time of day it is, because for me, I just don't find there's much of a mental burden. I don't find there's the issue of that I can kind of snap in and out of it pretty quick. In that I'm in work mode real quick, I'm out, I'm back to where I was. And maybe I'm lying to myself. You know, maybe I that's not actually the case, but that's the way I feel. So I guess, does that sort of answer your question as to why a holiday could be a really good mental break from work in general?
Yeah.
For a lot of people,
I think it does. It's more so just another question that it poses, is that, do you need that mental break so badly that you're looking forward to the holidays as the only good thing about kind of your daily life up until that point? And then it's almost a shame that we're not acknowledging the beautiful things that happen on a daily basis. Like, did someone smile at you today? Did they say hello? Are you walking down the street that someone's paved? Are you walking along someone else who's going throughout their normal day, completely head in the clouds, and you just happen to be another person who's walking by? Like, there's so many amazing things that go on that I take for granted absolutely all the time. But if we slow down for just a second and acknowledge, hey, all these people are working towards a greater goal, which is providing an amazing community that works towards making everything else better around it, despite what some people may be out to think. It's like, oh, everyone's working for themselves. I'm like, yeah, but we're working for ourselves for everyone else. It's very much a situation
in the community.
of we're working together. If everyone was working for themselves, they just go live in the backwoods and have a shack. And I mean, there is always a primal urge to just make a Minecraft house in the middle of the outback and then call it a day. But, you know, put that to the side for 2 minutes.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking about that as well, in the whole idea of jobs providing value, in that we tend to see certain jobs providing more value than others. And obviously it's a spectrum-based thing. But I think there's a lot of people that will also say there's lots of jobs that don't provide any value to the community or to society as a whole. And I don't know, for me, I think I disagree with that, because I think then you wouldn't be employed. Right? Does that make, I don't know if I'm thinking about it too simplistically.
No, absolutely. I think the only jobs that provides absolutely no value is things like scalpers and scammers. But they're not really jobs. They're kind of just like temporary
jobs,
things
exactly,
that are trying to steal money from economic inefficiencies. But even the person who cleans the toilets provides a very, very, very important service to everyone who doesn't really acknowledge it. Like, if toilets didn't get cleaned, you definitely notice you want them to be spick and span and shiny. Like, it's a situation of their service is extremely valuable, and once you notice it's gone, that value has increased.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I'll speak for the both of us. We're more than happy to be corrected on that. If someone, imagine if we had someone in the comments being like, "You guys are very wrong. Here's a comprehensive list of all the jobs that provide no value." It's just...
I mean, look, if it costs money, it provides value to someone.
That's what, I think it's really can be seen as that simplistic. But, you know, full disclosure, Matthew and I are just dietitians. We're not economists.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I've got absolutely no idea what an economy is and or what money is. I genuinely just look at it, and then sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, and then somehow I might end up in a house one day. Probably not, but that's a whole nother topic of global collapse.
Mine one kept going up and up and up and up. And then I got a call one day from the bank saying that I owed them lots of money, and I just didn't see the negative sign in front of it. That's all.
That's a bit of a shame. I have too many Lamborghinis. Moving on to the other aspects of recovery.
Okay, so I think let's go back. So we can I love the idea we're delving into the recovery, the exact opposite of what people would have thought. When they think recovery, they're going, it's always going to be about recovering from your muscles, recovering joint recovery, health recovery. It could be a bunch of different things, but we're going, fuck that. Let's talk about mental health. Holidays can be a good tool, and I think we can both agree they can be a good tool if your job's super stressful, if you're managing a bunch of people, just feeling super stressed out, to go on a holiday, completely remove yourself from everything and everyone, and it's like a big reset. It's like really giant the weekend, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, I definitely, I don't disagree in the slightest. I think it can be a really useful tool. It's also just about, if we're looking at recovery from a broad sense, can we do some things on the normal, on the daily basis that are aiding us in just making us a little bit more ready, a little bit more prepared for the next day, a little bit more capable and ready for the things that come along. And that's what I really love about the whole idea of appreciating and working with your mental health, is that it's not just a burn yourself out mentally until your holiday. It's very much a, you need to keep it up, otherwise things crash and crash pretty hard.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is interesting. It's an interesting way of thinking about things, because if I was to pull off with an analogy a little bit, there's a lot of people who say, from a hypertrophy training point of view, that you should try and be sustainable about it. You should never need to deload. You should always just fatigue yourself enough so that you're always going to be prepared for the next week and the next month and the next year. But we know that's just not actually what happens in the real world. People do need deloads, and you do need to periodize your training in a way so that you have a block of training where you go progressively harder and harder and harder, then you deload, and then you repeat the block essentially. And you might even have bigger blocks where you'll do several blocks in a row, and then after several blocks you'll have a really big break for 2 to 3 weeks or so, which kind of does mimic life a little bit in a way, in that's your holiday as well. But obviously that's an analogy, so it very well may not apply at all. I do have the sense that it could be similar though. What do you think about that overall, like the idea of having a mesocycle, deloading, etc.?
Well, I think that's extremely interesting, and it's almost a completely different ball game from what we're talking about. Look, I think there's aspects, and everyone's different. Like, everyone has different views and values on certain types of holidays. Just personally, I don't find the value is there in my own life, but that doesn't mean that yours is different or the same.
Yeah.
It's very much a situation of what does work for you. Do you need the holiday every now and then, and that keeps you going, and that, exactly like you mentioned, you're looking forward to that holiday, so it really provides that sense of reward, that accomplishment. I've worked for something hard. I've gotten to this point, now I can relax, reward myself, and appreciate all the hard work that I've put in that meantime.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think that's really well said. Let's move on to some other aspects. So, mental health, what other things can we be doing to improve that? I think for me, the biggest thing where I'd like to steer this conversation is moving from a point of view of being really understanding whether things are sustainable. And I think the best question is to be really, really honest with yourself, asking yourself, can I keep this up in 5 years? Can I continue doing this several years down the road? Do I think to myself, holy shit, when am I going to be done with this? When am I going to finish this? Because if those questions are creeping in, there's some pretty big alarm bells as to, this ain't right. Shit's got to change. And if it doesn't, I'm going to... I using the word crash and burn because I feel like it's so dramatic, but probably suitable in this case.
I think it is, absolutely. I think mental health is one of the only aspects where it really is a situation of, once you're burnt out, you're properly burnt out. And people have different views and burn out in different ways, but it's very much a situation of, if you're pushing yourself that hard, it's almost like it's like a bottle and you're just funneling things in, and eventually it's going to burst out and end up in that crash and burn situation. So it tends to be, what are you doing on that daily basis? What's causing the so-called stress that you think that you're not going to be able to get to the point in that 7 years time and maintain the current lifestyle that you have? Or are you just soldiering on and almost in denial? I personally have been in denial a few times in my life, Max. It seems to be a pretty recurring event that I'm like, she'll be right. No problems at all. The classic Australian saying of, don't worry about it. Like, it's going to be completely fine. But in reality, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And if I take 2 seconds to look back and examine what are the stresses that's happening, how can I overcome the situation, and then what can I learn from that to move on in the future, there's a lot that can be said about that entire scenario and providing just a bit of a smoother transition through life. I prioritize that as much as possible, and really acknowledge that stress is a very key factor in health, full stop. There's no debate about it. It's seen time and time again in the literature. It's one of those things where it's hard to quantify, but once you can get a general grasp of things, you're like, okay, wow, stress tends to be one of that overall top things where it's you need to control it, otherwise your health outcomes are not good. And
Yeah,
being able to
yeah, 100%
identify those
agree.
points and work for them and adjust around that can provide some real value to yourself mentally and physically.
Man, I 100% agree with you, without a doubt, that stress is so underplayed, and that's why I'm going to be touching on it throughout my social media posts, throughout my videos that I'm going to put up on YouTube and Instagram, and throughout everywhere, blogs on the website that we're going to have up. We're going to be speaking about it on the podcast, because it's interesting that this. I'm not saying that people aren't aware of it. The science, essentially the evidence-based community for bodybuilding, for health, nutrition, dietetics, they understand. Like, most of them tend to understand the importance of stress, but they don't tend to convey that message, and that's the disconnect that I seem to find. I think that there could be a lot of improvement around being able to actually convey how important stress is, because all I get on my social media feed is from people who are dietitians or coaches in the field talking about training and nutrition, maybe sleep here and there, and I never hear anything about stress. And then I'll hear the odd comment saying a very true comment saying stress is the most important thing. If you're super stressed, it's gonna ruin your gains. And it's like, but you've never taught me anything about that. You just make that blanket statement, and then that's it. That's all I hear about it for the next until I hear another comment in 1 to 2 years, which is the exact same thing. So that's something Matt and I will definitely absolutely be touching on. I completely agree. Matt, what was the first thing you said? I really liked that as well. Guys, quick ad break. We are currently taking on clients. Click the first link in the description to explore more. Back to it.
I blabber on so much that I honestly forget what I say most of the time. It's very much a situation of I have to retrace my steps to get to exactly where I came from.
That was exactly what I was trying to retrace your steps. You said something that I really liked as well. But yeah, I forget. But yeah, I think overall with this mental health thing, just to comment, an additional thing would be that without a doubt, you want to make sure everything you're doing is going to be sustainable, but also acknowledging that, yes, here we go, I've got it. So also acknowledging that sometimes there's going to be periods where you might want to push those boundaries and test the boundaries. Being a young person, the young people that we are, we need to know what our boundaries are. And the only way you can truly know what they are is by breaking them. I feel like that's just that might be a hot take, but I feel like it's pretty true.
I love that.
In that the only way that you would know, hey, I've actually experienced this before. I've experienced this point where if I keep pushing myself and keep pushing myself and keep going and going and going, and then I break, you know what that feels like. And you've done it before, and you can sense it, and you know to pull back next time. You know where that line now sits for you. And I think the good thing is that you probably think it's actually a lot higher than what you may have estimated it was had you never been there. And that can be said on a physical sense as well. And the whole idea of potentially, not getting people who are early on in their training to deload for a little while, just to get them used to the sense of that you actually can push yourself a lot harder than what you think before you need to deload. So I'd say both mentally and physically, those areas are going to be, things where potentially if you were to do it without reaching that point, you might underestimate yourself.
I think there's even more to that than what you've said, Max. I very much preach the saying, you use it or you lose it. And the same applies for resilience. Unless you push your boundaries and continue to strive for that next level of your ability to actually perform something, your capacity reduces. It just goes down over time. We see it time and time again, whether it's physical over time through age and potentially and or injury, or whether it's mental and your capacity to learn things, take on new abilities, acquire and adapt to certain situations. It's very much a situation of, do we have the resilience to deal with that situation? And then more importantly, addressing the recovery, do we have the recovery or recoverability to bounce back from that situation? And then where is the balance? Do we need extended time? Do we need more coping mechanisms around that situation? Do we need to balance things in a way that it is more sustainable if we're pushing ourselves like that? So I can definitely go and try to do a marathon tomorrow, but I can almost guarantee that I'll spend about a week in bed trying to recover from that. But if I push myself a little bit more and more each day, whether it's, again, with the marathon analogy, or push myself for hypertrophy, or whether it's trying to learn something new, I'll eventually get there. It may take a little bit of time, but it's more so about balancing it correctly with recovery and pushing yourself to the point of resilience that I find is very important.
Yeah, I definitely tend to agree. The only thing I'd change with that marathon one would be I'd use more of a mental sport kind of thing. So chess or Rubik's Cube or something like that, in that at the start of that first day, you're going to feel cooked. You're going to be, man, that was a really killer first day. I'm so exhausted. And you just get used to it. That's just, your body adapts, your brain adapts. You get used to feeling it, and then you're able to adapt and adapt. So yeah, I 100% agree. Also, guys, what we're saying now, this only applies for people who are actually going to be doing these things long term, right? If you have a chess tournament coming up in a month and you're going, fuck, there's no way I could be doing this in 5 years. It's like, yeah, you're not. You're going to be finishing your chess career in 1 month. So you don't really need to be worrying about that. But if it's something more sustainable, where it's like, for example, you're sitting at maintenance calories, you're at the weight you want to be at, and you're sitting at maintenance calories, and you're asking yourself the question, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up for. That's definitely a concern.
Absolutely. That's definitely a very delicate point to discuss, whether it's, of course, related to recovery from nutrition interventions. I think that's probably one of the more key points that I personally implement into my own practice is, how can we make those nutrition interventions without causing excessive mental fatigue that's going to lead us to spiral down and end up in that yo-yo, just like every other fad diet out there? Can we recover from the decisions? Do we have the ability to deal with the decisions on a daily basis? And if not, how can we plan around that? What are the solutions to this situation? And how can we adjust to reach our goals?
Yeah, for sure. And exactly, that's essentially why we exist, Matt, in that we're really good at being able to, when people are feeling like they don't have any options left, or they don't know where to go from here, or they just even need a little bit of guidance, that's where we play. So if you're exactly in that scenario, just like what we said, that's what we're experts at. That's our domain.
Or at least attempted experts. We try our best.
Yeah. We're charlatans at.
Always.
So we've got the recoverability. What about weekends? How much do you value weekends? Because I guess, would you use the same philosophical standpoint about weekends as you do as holidays?
I currently do. So it's quite interesting. I used to very highly value weekends as a very specific time where it's, hey, no work, zero, absolutely not, no way at all. Then I kind of stepped back and just realized, well, I really don't enjoy the work that I'm doing on the weekends. And the only reason I'm looking forward to the weekends is because I get to spend time with my friends and or do activities that I normally wouldn't be able to do in my daily life. But if I can incorporate those during the week, space them out so every day is a little bit of pleasure, a lot of play, a lot of fun, and of course, a lot of working hard towards a goal of mine, then I find that the use of weekends is personally not there for me. Like, I'm currently working 7 days a week, about 14 hours a day, and if not more. And I never thought that would be possible for myself. I was very much the situation of, hey, look, I'll work as little as possible just to get by in life, but finding myself immersed in this situation where I'm really enjoying what I'm doing may not provide that monetary benefit as of yet, if ever, but that passion that I have towards this project of ours and providing that support for people in our community is something that spurs me on and provides such a great motivator and has really turned into a discipline of sorts.
Yeah, 100% agree. And that's what we said, Matt, from the start, is that it doesn't matter what happens with this, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep it up, because the reason being is because we're passionate about it and because we love it. And I don't want it any other way personally, and I know you don't as well.
Spot on, Max. Spot on.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
What is your take on weekends?
Yeah. See, look, I'm very much so similar to holidays in that I think really offer a really good amount of value to most people, and there's very few select people that probably don't need them. And I think just, yeah, it's a really good reset, really good break, something to look forward to. That's why everyone gets excited on a Friday, right? I'm not saying that it's the same for me as well, right? It's just because I feel like there'd be a lot of people like this that, look, to be fair, let's just take all the people that dislike work or hate their work out of this equation, because I'm not even personally talking about them. I don't think you are as well, Matt, just because if you're in that situation, that's a really bad it's just hating work is awful.
Absolutely.
Like, you got to be there for 8 or 9 hours a day. So it's a really awful thing to be in. So I feel like it's so hard to speak to, and that might be what we touch on after this. Actually, what you could do to counteract that, and I'd say we both just conclude pretty quickly that weekends and have as many holidays and weekends and public holidays is what you can if you hate it. But yeah, from my point of view, where I'm really loving my work, still nice. Still looking forward when it's a Saturday arvo, and I know I'm going to be having Sunday off. That's awesome. It's exciting because I'm getting to spend the whole day with people that I haven't spent much of the week with, and do new things and hang out with people and do other things in my life that are exciting. I think when doesn't seem to be as much balance in my life as what people would consider to be ideal, it's great being able to have a day off or a couple of days off to be able to really, really implement a lot of that balance back into my life and really just completely shut off from everything else.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I can't argue with that at all. I think everyone has their own version of balance, and then finding what works for you is probably the most key and important aspect. Again, look, it's time and time again with health, nutrition, sport, performance, mental ability, and capacity. It's all about finding what works for you and what you can do to reach your goals. And whether we say something or suggest something may not be applicable to you in the slightest. I can almost guarantee that the way I do things is not going to work for the vast majority of people that I speak to in general or know of. But that doesn't mean that we can't use the literature to provide really great strategies to meet what your goals are within the set of requirements that you're dealt with.
Yeah, cool. Would you agree with me what I said before about the whole idea that if you're really disliking or hating your work, you probably really want to utilize your holidays and weekends as much as you can?
Can't argue at all. Yeah, absolutely. If I was in that position where it's like work sucks, full stop. It's very much a situation of I'm valuing every second of time that I'm not at that place, as long as I can't escape that specific environment. So again, with my passion for cutting off from any kind of work as soon as I'm done with it, even more so applies for the situation of if I'm working a 9 to 5 in an office cubicle and not speaking to anyone every day and just punching in numbers. That sounds like the worst thing from my perspective, but for someone else, absolutely fine. But if it was in my situation, it's very much, hey, I finished work, phone's off, emails off, not even thinking about it. Calendar is left at work. Very much a situation of if there's a problem, it's dealt with tomorrow. Otherwise, the manager's going to deal with that because that's his job to worry about that stuff. I'm just there to punch some numbers.
Yeah. It's very interesting you said that. And for me, I think one of the things that I probably really struggle with is having the empathy for people who hate work or strongly dislike their work, because I've only really had one period in my life where I've really, really disliked the work that I've done. I've had so many different jobs, about heaps and heaps of different jobs. I only really had one period in my life where I really, really disliked it. And it was only for a short amount of time too, before I just had a lucky little break and things opened up my way and I did not end up having to do that anymore. And that was seriously so awful. I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I went through it, because I know when people say they hate work and I think, holy shit, you experienced what I experienced, but like long term, it's like, wow, you're tough. That's really tough. So I really, really couldn't stand it. And yeah, if you're in a position where you have to be like that, I completely agree. You're doing, I don't want to say the bare minimum, because I don't want to be promoting people doing the bare minimum, but you're essentially doing what you got to do to get by, and then making sure that you're in a position where you can keep working there. Because I feel like if you're in a position where you're hating work, and I think you'd agree with Matt, the likelihood that you're going to want to quit or leave or do something else is probably pretty likely.
Absolutely. I've also experienced some similar situations during my career such far where it's like, wow, this absolutely sucks. Like I could throw many names under the bus, but I definitely won't from a professional perspective. But it's very much a situation of, I can't believe this environment exists and people just go along with it because this is the career path that they're kind of, whether they're chosen to be in it or stuck in it, or that's their passion. It's very much a situation where it doesn't necessarily align with my goals and how I would like to live my life and or work. I had this great conversation with a good friend of mine recently. I'm like, hey man, do you like your boss? He goes, "Ah, yeah, look, he's all right. It's whatever, nothing too bad. He kind of annoys me sometimes." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's all right, I guess. But like, you spend more time with your boss than you do your family, your kids, your girlfriend, so you probably should like him." It's very much a situation of that's a lot of your time that you're spending with someone else that isn't a situation where you prefer to be. And it sounds to me quite interesting how people will often just clock in, clock out. That's kind of it. Not want to make anything of it. And I'd love to touch on your point where do the not promoting someone to do the bare minimum. That's always been an interesting thought process of I guess my own. There's certain areas where I think it's absolutely appropriate to do just the bare minimum because you're getting reimbursed from a monetary perspective for the absolute bare minimum, being like a Macca's worker or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, I don't expect you to even give me my burger warm. It's very much a situation of like if you spit in it, I think that's a gracefulness from my perspective. But if you're like punching out your absolute cash dollar holler law deals and or closing mad business with I don't know P Diddy or something, then from my perspective, like, yeah, you got to really enjoy what you're doing because the value is there and reimbursing you. Not to say that value is necessarily received in the same
No,
way.
not enjoy. Sorry. I think just quickly, you said enjoy. You must do it to a very high standard, right?
Great correction, Max. Absolutely. I think the effort should be reflective of the reimbursement.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. And I think I believe I heard Joe Rogan talking about it. I didn't listen to his podcast, but I saw a clip of him talking about how if you are in those situations where you found yourself in a position, there's a lot of people that unfortunately find themselves in that position one way or another. It's super common and it's super easy to get into the position of being stuck in a job you don't like and you can't do anything else. You've still got bills to pay, still got people to feed, got a lot of things going on in your life, and you can't just get up and leave your job. So you're stuck in a position you hate. And then it's almost as though, where do you go from here? And I heard him talking about that if you're in that position, which is a lot of people, do everything you can outside of those hours, outside of your work hours, to get out of that position. Apply for jobs, upskill, start a business, do anything you can so that you know that as every day goes by, you're another day closer to being able to leave the job that you hate. I think that's the best way to... All you can do is control what you can control. And if you can make sure that you're getting out of there by doing it the best you can, that's all you can do, really.
Well said, Max. Well said. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's a shitty situation when we're in that kind of position where it's almost, it feels like everything is useless and we can't put our effort towards anything good. But if we can chip away at something over time, look, even if you're putting like $1 away per day, at the end of the year, you're going to have $365, which you can put towards something else. There's always ways that we can improve the situation. It may not be as fast or as dramatic as we want, but there's always ways to work towards our goals.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Now, how this ties back to recovery, I've got absolutely no idea, but it does.
Well, I think that's a great little segue there. In terms of stressful situations in life, whether it's work and or emotional state, family values, and matters, things that happen along the lines, some areas that have really helped me personally is just being able to turn off myself and or a little bit of meditation. Like, I used to be in the position of meditation, get out of here, like that's ridiculous. You're going to sit there and cross your hands and hope that everything gets better, but it really provides a sense of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a surreal ability to look at your situation objectively and really take everything in, emotionally process it, and acknowledge what's going on around me. And this only happened in the last, let's say, 5 years or so, where I've been able to actually process that on a daily basis, and or even just take 5 minutes out of my day if I'm feeling extremely stressed for whatever reason it is. And I still apply this to sometimes. Having those few minutes just to sit down, and some people do it without realizing, with a cup of coffee and just having a sit down in a park. Those minutes are priceless, especially when managing your day-to-day stresses.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, nice, man. I really like that. I definitely have some similar thoughts around that. I'm actually going to maybe be a little bit too ambiguous with this because I've got some really cool things in the works that are coming on that are going to be uploaded and posted very soon, especially once this is posted. It'll probably be another month or two since that. So I think a YouTube video as well as a couple of Instagram posts around that whole stress factor. So I'm not going to touch on this too much because this is kind of exactly what I'm going to be talking about. What I will touch on is, I think another element you can really help to implement the stress is doing those really basic things you hear all the time. Obviously, going for walks. People say that exercising, so getting to the gym, making sure that when you're stressed, you're still doing these things. You're not super stressed. You're not so stressed to the point that, oh man, nah, not going to the gym this week. It's just too bad. Still being strict with those things, still getting those walks, that cardio in, getting out in the sun, out in the fresh air is obviously going to have a really big impact. Making sure your sleep's really good, your nutrition is staying, somewhat the same. I don't think it'd be I don't feel like this is a hot take, but when life gets stressful, that doesn't warrant all the good things you're doing in your life for that to go completely out the door. I think it's still worth, still staying strict and still staying strong with all that, because at the end of the day, they're great for a bunch of reasons, and they're also great for helping you stay less stressed.
Just a quick ad break. We're now currently taking clients by the link in the description or via our website. Back to it. I found that especially true with, in particular, my exercise. If I'm stressed to the point where I'm like, I just need to keep working, like I need to do this thing, I need to get this done, I need to get this assignment done, I need to reach out to this person or whatever it is, I don't have time to go exercise. For me, it's a cascade of events. If I don't exercise, then I don't sleep properly. If I don't sleep properly, I'm not prepared for the next day properly. I'm not recovered mentally or physically. If I don't do that, then my efficiency is reduced for the next day. And then if I'm inefficient, then I can't produce my outcomes. And it's going to get to a point where it's even way worse. And then, of course, I can't spend time to stop for lunch. I just need to have something super quick and really get it out of the way and done. And then my nutrition drops. And all of a sudden, I've ended up in a point where I'm completely against from a philosophical and a health perspective. And it was all stemming from that one decision to not have that exercise session, for me in particular. And I know some people are quite similar, is that once something else spirals out or something else isn't in control, everything else tends to crumble around it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, completely agree. I 100% am on board with exactly what you just said. I think there's two elements for me that I pick up on when you say that. The first one being that if that exercise example is great, miss out on the session, and then you think to yourself, well, I didn't train today, so my nutrition could be a bit off as well. Who cares? It doesn't really matter because I didn't even train today, so I'm not going to be building much muscle. That's the silly thinking that's going on in your head. So then the nutrition goes, and just like you said, sleep's going to be off, and then everything's off just from one thing. I think as well, another element too, the final element is that once one thing goes, people tend to be very, very binary and black and white about this, and which is just one of the things that really, really upsets me, because I'll hear people say, oh, I had an extra piece of cake today. You know what? Don't worry about it. I'll have the whole cake when I get home. I'll also order as much KFC as I want, and because my day's ruined, so whatever. Without realizing that no, I have made one mistake, or I have gone off the rails a little bit. I don't like these off rails. I have gone off from the course a little bit, but that doesn't mean that for the rest of the week or the rest of the day, or let's wait until the new year now. The start of the year wasn't the best in January. I'm just gonna call it. Let's wait until January next year, I reckon.
Next year's my year. That's my biggest pet peeve that I think everyone says. It's I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year. What about tomorrow? Like, are you going to wake up tomorrow and are you going to do the same thing? What's magical about January 1st that changes everything about the previous day? Is it something that
or even now? Yeah, like I'll even go further. Or even now, like why not now? I love saying tomorrow because like that's pretty immediate, but let's just go now.
Absolutely,
let's do it now.
Yeah. I think now tends to provide that. Okay, there's things in planning that's I need to get done right now. That's in my usual day, but how can we work around that? Can we fit 2 minutes in about thinking about the idea? Can we process the thoughts and plans for tomorrow that we're going to work towards that? It's very much a situation of if I wake up, okay, I'll think about it tomorrow. Think about it tomorrow is the same sense of, in my books, is I'll deal with it when it comes up. And it's almost never going to come up unless we kind of put it in front of our face.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree. And to be fair, to be clear, Matt really is practicing what he preaches here, because Matt and I will speak for too many hours of the day, probably from about 8:30 a.m. to probably 10:30 at night or so, round about. And every single night, the reason why we're stopping is because Matt needs to go to the gym. Matt needs to go to the gym. He needs to leave at 10:30 p.m. every night. And I tell him he's an absolute idiot. I usually use more profanity than that when he leaves, because I think it's dumb. But he does practice what he preaches in that he does get it. He does get that done, and he does get to the gym every single night, which is very respectable in and of itself.
Probably not the smartest decision for me. That's probably I could definitely be planning that a lot better. But it's a situation of, okay, I've ticked some boxes from today. Shit, I've still gotta exercise. Okay. It's definitely not good. And I'm encroaching on that quality of sleep because I'm exercising quite close to my bedtime, which we really do advise against from a recovery perspective, being the whole R of R.E.A.L. But it's one of those situations of, if I don't do it then I'm going to push it to tomorrow, and then it's going to be the exact same situation of today. It's about, okay, what can I do right now? That's what I can do right now. And then I can fix the situation tomorrow, where I can work out X time. I can plan in my diary. Like I've had to recently do, which I never would thought I would. So I've had to adapt to the situation of missing lunch. Like I've had to book in lunches for myself, which is quite interesting from a dietitian who's having to plan out their own schedule, in the sense that they have to make sure that they have time to eat and be in touch with their hunger cues. An interesting perspective.
Look, exactly. And we touched about that earlier on a few podcasts ago, and because I was thinking about it, and I really like what you said. I really like the fact that the biggest thing for me is that it shows what we've learned and what you've learned as a whole, as a practitioner, is that, again, it just really, to put it as succinctly as possible, identifying the problem and coming up with a solution to the problem. And if that doesn't work, like let's say the best thing that would have happened would that, although I'm so glad you found a solution, if you didn't, let's say the calendar thing didn't work and you kept going, you'd look at the calendar and you go, nah, I'm keeping on going. You'd find some other way. You'd go, man, this lunch thing's really killing me. What am I going to do? And it will just probably progress in severity every time. You know the lunch is super important. So you might go, the next step might be that, hey, I'm going to make sure my mum or dad give me a call, or one of my family members pulls me out of my room at X amount of time every day. And then even if you get angry, then go, no, leave me alone. And you're still working, and that solution didn't work. Okay, I got to think of something else. All right, let's set it so that at 12:30 every day, I'm going to put these special PowerPoints on my computer. They turn off every single day at 12:30 until 1 o'clock. So I have to, like that. I guess that's the point. Like, it's obviously such a stupid way of thinking, but I guess you get the point in that that's probably what you would have done. You know, if that calendar thing didn't work for you, there's the next thing, and there's the next thing, and there's always going to be a solution. And it's just a matter of trial and error until we find that solution. We know what the problem is. We've been really honest about the problem, which is probably the hardest bit. Most people, I reckon, Matt, would you say most people know both the problem and the solution? It's just maybe implementing the solution that could be.
It's often very.
No, actually, no. I disagree with what I said. Just then. Sorry.
Really? Okay, I was going to say I do agree. I think that often the solution is right in front of their faces, but it's a situation of, I know what to do, I just don't want to acknowledge it, and that's a stark reality. That's terrifying. I know how to get to the end of the problem, but it's going to require so much effort and or planning and or mental fatigue that it's almost like I'm hoping there's a magic button, a magic pill that I can take that's going to solve my problems for me. When in reality, it may just be that is the reality of the situation. And that's both depressing and empowering at the same time. Okay, cool, amazing. That's scary in me moving forward. That is the solution. But it's also amazing because that means I can work with that, and I can know that if I put in this effort, that I'm going to reach some similar outcome to what my goal is.
Yeah, this is really interesting that you say that, because I think I tend to disagree, actually. And I think because I do understand where you're coming from. I think there's a really good line of thought that you're coming from, and it's not that I don't think when I say I disagree and that I say you're wrong, I'm just saying I disagree in that I tend to think a little bit differently. I think my mind works a little bit differently because I actually fully understand where you're coming from, and I fully understand the direction you've taken and the logical steps you've taken. I think what you're making makes complete sense. Would you say, without putting words in your mouth, would you say it's more about that? Because I really like this whole idea and this whole ideology of the client knows what's best for them. They know themselves best. And so they're probably going to know what solutions are best for them too.
Yes.
Cool. That's great. From my point of view, because again, that's the way I interpret it, and that's the way I understand it, and I think that does make good logical sense. 100%. For some clients, I can 100% exactly see where you're coming from. And I think you would probably agree with me when I'd say there's going to be a proportion of clients, and the percentages of those are going to be different depending on who you see, what categories of people you see. I think there's also going to be a lot of people who have a severe knowledge gap and they know the problem, or once you speak about it a bit longer with them, that you're able to identify the problem together. And there just is the knowledge gap. They might go, oh, the solution is, yeah, man, yeah, I'm just eating, I'm trying to lose weight, I'm just eating too many carbs. Man, I've just got to cut out the bread and I know I'll be fine after that. And going, yeah, we've really got to adjust this solution because that's not how we're going to roll here. That's not what we're doing. So I'm guessing you're going to agree with what I just said, yeah?
No, I completely disagree. Yeah, of course I agree, Max. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So I guess it would just be a matter of managing that. In that, when you hear their solution, what percentage of that do you tend to agree with and tend to want to go along with and trust the client with that, and what percentage do you want to pull them up and go, let's go down this course instead. I think this will be a better route, or can we try this option, kind of thing.
Yeah. I find that I would say that the expression that I've made can happen for, let's say, about, look, if I'm generalizing, maybe 50% of people, but exactly like you mentioned, there is potentially a large knowledge gap for a vast array of symptoms. I personally noticed that my financial knowledge gap is quite prevalent, and that tends to be one point that I really endeavor to work on and require some additional services from professionals in that field. But that means that I've identified exactly where my problem arises and how I can find the solution. Sometimes for some clients of mine, all they need is just a couple of questions to probe, okay, but what is a carbohydrate? How do we identify it? Is that a problem? Is it bad for us? Is it good for us? What's the nuance of this situation? How do we reach the conclusion that we want to? And how do I provide the tools for you available to chip away at the problem and really work towards that outcome that you're looking for?
Yeah, for sure. And help them to ask questions for themselves, right? Because if you start to ask some good questions that gets the client thinking, that's a flow-on effect, right? They're also going to start to think of more good questions, most likely. Simple questions, just like all those questions you asked were super simple. How is it that you think we gain weight? Boom. Let's talk about that. There's going to be a flow-on effect of that. Oh, that was a good question, and then you can get the logical thinking going from there.
A little bit of a side tangent, Max. I absolutely love
shit, this podcast has only been side tangents.
Absolutely. I think we were talking about recovery at some point.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. All I remember was we're talking about our bank statements earlier on.
Pretty much. Do you want to chat about recovery, physical and mental, for a couple more minutes and then we'll call it a day, or would you like to do a part 2?
Yep. Yeah, we're going to do a part 2. Yeah, so definitely. So let's round this out for a mental. Let's give a really strong summary as to what our opinions and what our thoughts are, and kind of what conclusions we came to around the importance of recovery from a day-to-day standpoint, from a weekend standpoint, from a holiday standpoint, and then that extra case scenario of what to do when you are really hating your work. Because for all these people, this is when you're kind of enjoying your work. What to do when you're, or just work's work. No one's going to love work. Oh, I love work, but
apart from
no one's going to love work. Most people aren't going to love work, but what to do when you're really, really hating work as that final fourth one. I'll help prompt you if you get lost.
Beautiful. So let's start with the first prompt, Max. What was that one?
First one is day to day. What sort of things are we doing day to day? I really like what you said before.
Amazing. Yeah, it's more so just about finding the coping mechanisms and the strategies that work for you in your day-to-day life that are able for you and allow for you to cope and deal with those situations. For me personally, meditation was a pretty good one. It doesn't necessarily have to be the typical meditation where you're crossing your legs, but it can be of the mindfulness, sitting down for a few minutes, tuning yourself out, taking a breather. And then, of course, if you choose a different coping mechanism, just make sure that it's working towards your goals instead of inhibiting you from reaching your goals. So I find that some people can often lead towards the substance use, which sure, like on occasion.
Or social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Your social media grinding. It can definitely be one of those situations where it's really not working towards our goals in the long term. And for me personally, if I find myself on social media, and I've noticed it recently, is that I think it's me taking a break, but it's my mind constantly being active and I feel like I'm busy, but I've just got nothing done.
Yeah, man, social media is killer. So the good thing about the social media that I've liked is that because I'm now posting on social media, I really don't want to go on it because I don't want to see what comments I have in the social media. So it's a very good deterrent. Very good deterrent.
Absolutely. Why don't you take us through point 2, Max?
Point 2. So weekends. From my standpoint, weekends are really, really valuable. Really good opportunity to look forward to what's ahead. Apply a lot more balance into your life. Absolutely, your regular life should have a good amount of, your regular weekday life should have a good amount of balance in it. It should be waking up, making yourself some breakfast, sitting down with the family, then you drive to work or go to work, spend 8 hours at work, 9 hours at work, come home, spend more time with the family, go for a little exercise, play a board game, just read a book, and then go to sleep. That's the ideal life from a, what is it?
From a Max?
I guess Australian dream kind of standpoint. That's what everyone thinks of, like
a nuclear family
average
kind of situation.
person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like your olden days, like typical kind of life.
I don't think many people have that kind of life nowadays.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. That's just extremely rare, obviously, just by virtue of living in 2024. That being, which also means that probably weekends are even more important, right? Because that meant that your weekdays had quite a lot of variation in them. There was a lot of things going on. You were socializing a lot. You had a really good amount of balance in your life. But if we're being honest, today's average person probably sounds something a bit like wake up, shove in some breakfast while you're scrolling through some sort of social media, drive to work while you're blasting music or got a podcast on, which hey, I do that all day long. So I'm not shitting on people. This is just the reality of things. Yeah. Go to work. You're obviously just working the whole day, and then you come home, you'll have some TV frozen dinner, and then sit on YouTube for the next 3 hours, and then go to sleep scrolling on TikTok or something like that. And you may have said hello to someone at some stage like that if you're lucky. That's kind of the reality of most people's weekdays, I feel like. Maybe it's a bit dramatic, obviously. But I think weekends employ a really good ability to do all those things that you probably have missed out on throughout the week. Socializing, actually being able to spend time to relax and sit down and chill out properly. I think they offer a really significant amount of value in a lot of people's lives, if you utilize them well. There's a lot of people that probably don't utilize them well.
Yeah, absolutely. Big asterisks there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And doing all those right
Would
things.
you say the same applies for holidays?
I think the only thing is, I would just say the proportion of people utilizing their holidays well is super significantly higher than the proportion of people utilizing their weekends well. I would say with a good amount of confidence, 90 to 95% of people utilizing their holidays do a really good job at it. I don't know many people, at least the people I speak to in the circles I hang around in, they go on a holiday and that's it. They're isolated. They might go on their phone a couple times a day to shoot a text to their mum to say, hey, I'm alive. All's good. And that's kind of it from my understanding of things. Obviously, if you're going on holiday to work or whatever, that's not really a holiday. But if you're going on is it leisure? Yeah, a leisure holiday. I think most people do a pretty good job at it, personally.
I love a good staycation, Max. I'm a bit hypocritical in that one. I find a staycation is very relaxing.
Oh, for sure. It very well may be. But I think, obviously, in comparison, you're going to completely agree. If you had the option to do what's going to provide you with the most mental recovery, either a holiday for complete leisure or a staycation, what are you going to choose, right?
It's 50-50. Depends what video game I'm into at the time.
Oh, sorry. I was under the impression staycation was a holiday where you still worked.
Oh, no. That's called working.
Staycation. Oh, yeah. No, I think, look, I tend to disagree. I would say the staycation, issues with the staycation is, I think, it undervalued the importance of completely changing your environment. You knew where I was going before I even said it, didn't you?
Not really. No. Take me through that a little bit, just in a couple of seconds, and then we'll kind of wrap up.
Yeah. So I think changing your environment, sitting in this room, I know what it's like to sit in this room. You don't, because that would be cool. It'd be cool to have a full camera so you can just see every single aspect of this room, every little detail in the wall. Anyway, so point being is that for sure, like it's just a room, it's just an objective room, but there are associations with the room. I know there's pretty strong literature around that. There's associations with places, and that's the reality. And that the association with this room that I have is a really, really, really strong association with I work. Yeah, I've done all my degrees in here. I've done all my work with this in here. It's super, super ingrained in that when I walk into this space, I'm working. And I've reinforced that in that when I'm not working, I make sure to leave this space as well, because I try to ensure that gets stronger and stronger every single day, because I think it's a good thing, right? To have this space as my workspace, and then it's not both. It's like the same as lots of people say for sleep hygiene, you should only be sleeping in your bed. You shouldn't be spending time on your phone in bed. Well, I think they say sleep and sex, right? But essentially that's all you should be doing in your bed. And the reason why it's association, and that your body knows, your brain knows, when I go to bed, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to delve a little bit further into that in the part 2 of the podcast, Max, with just jumping straight into sleep and recovery from a nutrition, exercise, physiological perspective. I think we've touched on mental a fair bit in this podcast here.
Yeah, we've gone crazy on mental. And then, just the last thing, just really quickly, takes 10 seconds, is that, if you are someone who's really, really disliking your work or you're hating your work, I would say your job is actually outside of your work hours to improve your life and improve your situation, to ensure that you're not in that situation for much longer and reduce the amount of time that you're spending hating your life at work. That's your new job.
It's a very tricky situation for a lot of people. It can be, again, exactly like that, or potentially finding a new way of viewing the situation of providing more value to you, in that sense of, this is the job that is providing XYZ for me, which is allowing for XYZ pathways.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I really tried to, when I was disliking the work that I was doing, was ask myself and try and be brutally honest as to what it is that I dislike about the work so much. And that was one of the really things that I had these ideas and these hypotheses, but then when it turned out that it wasn't that, it was really just like, okay, so it's back to the drawing board. Like, what is it that I really, really dislike about it? And it was really hard to be honest with myself about that. And I think if you can ask yourself those questions, and then you can figure out what it is, maybe you can actually work on it and start to not hate it anymore, start to maybe enjoy it, maybe, just be neutral about it, or even enjoy it. There's that option too.
I've had that exact experience before, Max, and it's quite interesting that you raise it. And it's very much a situation of looking introspectively and understanding, what don't I like about it? Or is it just that I've convinced myself that I don't like it? I've convinced myself that this situation isn't good for some reason, or it isn't providing value to someone else, or it's not providing value to me. Well, a lot of jobs serve the purpose of providing that value of monetary reimbursement and allowing you to live your life the way that you really want to. I mean, sure, going homeless is an option, but I don't think it's everyone's first preference.
Yeah, without a doubt, 100%. And I think also probably be super honest with yourself about, are you just someone who always hates work? Have you ever had a job you like? Because I think if you've had a lot of different jobs and you've hated every single one of them, probably you've got to start looking within pretty quickly, because unless you've had a really, really unlucky run, you probably have been in work environments that are actually pretty fine. No issues at all. You might have had an unlucky run and not been in an amazing work environment. That's very possible. But it's most likely you've had quite a few jobs that you've at least stumbled upon a few jobs that have a decent work environment that is appropriate and enjoyable enough. And if you still hated that, then the problem is not the workplace, but yourself.
If you're in that exact situation, then the urge to move out to a shack in the middle of the bush is exponentially growing each day, and I would probably join you in that situation.
True. Hey, well, that's what I mean about the work begins. Your job is now getting yourself out of work. That's all the situation you're in. And that might be searching up some solar batteries on Elon Musk's website.
Potentially. Cool. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Outro time.
Stay for part 2. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Real Health and Nutrition podcast. The sponsor of today's show is you. You support the show by listening and using our services of dietitian consultations and performance coaching. We offer in-depth one-on-one consultations to help you achieve your health and performance goals. Any random bloke online can give you a generic meal plan, where we here at R.E.A.L work collaboratively with you to reach your goals, making you feel heard and including you in your journey's planning. Our service offers tailored advice and can accompany meal plans and/or realistic nutrition strategies, which can be booked via our website, www.recoveryexerciseandlifestyle.com. That's www.recoveryexerciseandlifestyle.com. Just a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for education, information, and general entertainment purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medical nutrition therapy or healthcare of any discipline. The content discussed in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute of professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please review our terms of use via our website. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.